Hey guys, guess what? The Hurricanes have been eliminated, but the offseason looks bright. Yep, Hurricanes have been eliminated, and we are going to be going through recapping Game 5 in this episode. Also, before we get to that, I have a big podcast announcement for those of you who don't follow us on at the social medias of our accounts. But Hurricanes being eliminated, you know what? I hate it, but this off season, I think it's going to be very, very fun. And just to give you guys a sneak peek, too, Friday episode is going to be like an introduction type of episode to the off season. So I'm going to go through all the facets for the Hurricanes in that episode. So that's kind of going to be the groundwork of what's going on in both this week's episodes. So first things first, obviously the Hurricanes are eliminated, but remember, you can still use our promo code Caniac Report, all one word, on SeatGeek if there are any concerts or comedy shows that interest you. I know it's the off season, so not really any hockey going on along unless you're probably an Edmonton fan listening to us or somehow a Florida fan listening to us. But regardless, there are plenty of venues that do use SeatGeek. So if you find anything interesting, you can use our promo code to help get some money. Or I would say probably just discounted tickets. Another thing too here is we have a link for donations. So if you feel like you want to donate, uh, there is a link for that in both our YouTube descriptions and wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple or Spotify. And remember, if you are watching us on YouTube, please hit that like button, hit subscribe, hit that notification bell so you never miss another episode. And if you are listening to us on Apple, Spotify, whatever, please leave a rating and a review. It really does help us out. So, big podcast news. Very, very big podcast news. As you guys probably noticed, it is just me this episode. But Sam Driscoll, just letting you guys know, he is no longer going to be a part of this podcast. Due to life changes in Sam's personal life, he is no longer a co host. He is perfectly fine and still a huge Hurricanes fan and will be at the games, but life changes have resulted in his inability to do the podcast anymore. So, it was fun, really, really fun doing this podcast with him. I mean, it was him and I that started this podcast, so it was really fun doing it with him. And you know what? I really enjoyed his time here. He always would make fun of me somehow on these episodes, as you guys know. But it's a new chapter for the Caniac Report. The podcast is still going to go on. It really is. But I'm just trying to bring closure to our former co-host and Sam Driscoll, and I wish him luck. Uh, so yeah, I will say this. I can't say anything in detail, but it's not. We are still great friends. We are. So it's not. It has nothing to do with our friendship. It's just outside circumstances have happened, and I might not be happy with those circumstances, but it's life. So that's all I can say. So yeah, the podcast is still going forward. There might be a co-host. If I do get a new co-host, it'll probably I'm aiming for the start of next season because I want to be cautious on who I want to bring on, of course, as a permanent co-host, but you'll most likely see me in solo episodes from here on out. Now, I might have some guests on. I might have again, this is not saying that they will be on, but I might be reaching out to other people to help come on just as a temporary placeholder, just to help with some episodes here and now. Might bring on Brandon, might bring on Matt from Caniac Sessions. If you guys don't know who Brandon is, he's part of the Warning Take. Might bring on my dad for a couple episodes, but it's going to be fun off season, and not just for this podcast, but for the Hurricanes. But there are a few things I do want to say around the league, as usual. Oh, and another thing too, if you are new to our podcast, that jumped on the podcast train during the playoffs, we have episodes coming out on Mondays and Fridays. They're usually 30 to 45 minutes, and we just talk about any topic relating to the Hurricanes or to the league. So it's going to be really, really fun. We usually start out with news around the leagues, then get into the Hurricanes and recap games in the season. In the off season, I'll probably it's the same formula, and I probably just pick a Hurricanes topic. Uh, Usually at the halfway mark where we usually recap games. So it's going to be fun. I really do think it is. So yes, couple things is one, the Cup Finals have been set. So Florida is going to be facing Edmonton, and this is going to be a series it's a repeat of last year. People might not like that. Personally, I probably don't like it, but there are people that might like it, and we'll see how they do. I will say this. I'll give my opinion. I am actually pulling for Edmonton because I like to have new Stanley Cup champs every year. And I know there are, unless it's unless it's the Hurricanes, of course, but I usually like to see different teams winning the cups. So that's why I'm pulling for Edmonton. And also with Florida beating Carolina, I mean, yeah, I don't like them. Now, does it help a little? Let's say if Florida does win the cup, does it make the loss against Florida maybe a little bit better? Maybe, but still, Florida still eliminated Carolina, and I am going to be mainly recapping Game 5 in this episode. So there's the Cup final being set. It's being set for Wednesday, so we'll see how those two teams battle it out. Honestly, I still, even though I'm pulling for Edmonton, I think Florida wins just because I just think they're the deeper team. I think they have the better goalie. I think they have the better defense. I think where Edmonton excels at is their offense, but with Florida, I mean, you can tell they play a type of game. Again, I think it's similar to Carolina, but their type of game it's a lot heavier. And I don't know if Edmonton can control that. So we'll see how they do. Obviously, I think a key thing for Edmonton that has helped them so far up to this point is their goaltending. So if their goaltending can stand up and their offense can be as good as it has been with McDavid and Recital, of course, I mean, they could win it, but I do think Florida wins it. That's just my opinion, though. Another thing, too, is we have another head coach position being filled up. And the Seattle Kraken have hired Lang Lambert. If you guys have heard that name before, he was the head coach of the New York Islanders before Patrick Raw came on. So we'll see how Lang Lambert does with the Seattle Kraken. Again, I mean, what's interesting with the Kraken, obviously, I think Carolina is leaps and bounds better. Their roster is better than Seattle. But one thing that I would say that's in common between Seattle and Carolina is they don't have that superstar. They don't have that David Matthews Kucherov. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because their general manager was once our general manager and Ron Francis. So we'll see how Lang Lambert does. I think they have a good couple young players. You have Matthew Beniers. I don't know if he's a first-line center, probably a second-line center. They also have Shane Wright. They have Riker Evans on the back end. So we'll see how Seattle does with Lang Lambert. Another thing, too, there have been a couple of small extensions, but the only extension I kind of want to talk about is Forrester from Philadelphia. He got extended on a 2-year extension with $3.75 million. I think that is a decent deal for a guy who's gotten 20 goals this past season, and he's young. I would say probably Philadelphia my guess. They probably wanted the term to be a little bit longer. But I think if the term was a little bit longer, they probably maybe would have had to pay more. But it's 2 year deal for Forrester. We'll see how Philadelphia does. I don't think anybody's expecting Florida to make the playoffs, but you can tell the player, or I would say probably a couple players that are headlining Philadelphia are Travis Sanheim on the back end, and obviously Mitchkov, the young Russian dynamic forward for Philadelphia. So we'll see how Philadelphia does with that signing. It really is, I think, a risk-free type of contract because it's only 2 years. It really is. I don't see any risk to it at all. If he doesn't do well this season, well, you know what? You have one more year left of a bad contract. So a pretty risk-free. And that's kind of it that I want to talk about when it comes to stuff around the league. And now I'm going to talk about my thoughts heading into game 5. And my thoughts were honestly a little bit positive because Hurricanes managed to win game 4 at Philadelphia. And for those who say, well, Philadelphia isn't as good as home as they're on the road, true. But if you can just get one win, you never know. And that's what my mindset was heading into game 5. I was like, okay, you won game 4, coming back at home. Yeah, Florida might be better on the road, but at least you have home ice advantage. And Carolina, I mean, this was the game where obviously they got eliminated, but heading into game 5, I was really, really kind of positive. I was like, maybe they pull this out. Maybe they do get a win. But overall, I mean, obviously there were still injuries, and when I obviously another thing too with game 5, I would say, is I was kind of hoping with Chatfield and Walker that they might come back. They never did. And it's interesting to me with Chatfield because obviously we saw him skating with warm-ups. And usually from just looking at him skating on warm-ups, it's like, okay, so he should be close. But I wonder with this injury with Chatfield, was it really close for him to come out and play a game? So that's my question. Because it looked like at one point, and then he never played a game after that injury. So I hope the severity isn't too bad. Obviously, I did hear, I believe, Chatfield and Walker will be ready for training camp. That doesn't really surprise me because it didn't seem like injuries that would last in that long enough that would head into next season. But it is a little bit disappointing on Chatfield's side, considering you just wonder if it was a little bit more severe than what we saw. And obviously, with Walker being out, that sucks too, because I think Walker has been one of the best defensemen in this playoff run for the Hurricanes. And another thing that was disappointing, I mean, Florida in game 4, they had 3 guys out. They had AJ Greer out. They had Sam Reinhart out of the lineup. And you had Mikko Nikola, who was out of the lineup as well. And another thing too, like there are some people are going to say, well, Florida just rested those players. If I was head coach of Florida in a playoff game, I would not be resting players. I don't care how much of an advantage you have against the other team. Listen, I know Florida was up 3-0 heading into game 4, but if you have a chance to close it out, you close it out. That's part of being a good head coach. So I don't want to hear this thing of, oh, yeah, Florida sat these 3 players out because they were just resting them. No, I do not believe in that at all. A coach's mindset should always be, if you can in the playoffs, if you can sweep the other team, you do it. You do not give the team any hope. So I kept hearing that quite a bit of, well, Florida was resting players in game 4. No, they were not. They were hurt. And just to show, in game 5, which I'm about to recap here, AJ Greer, even though he did play in the first and second periods, he didn't play at all, hardly, in the third period because he was battling something. He really was. So I just don't want to hear this. But now what we're gonna do, get to a sponsor, and then I will recap game 5. The fastest game on ice just hit another gear. Welcome to the Stanley Cup playoffs, where legends are made and every shift could turn the tide. And now with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can take every slap shot, breakaway, and overtime thriller to the next level. New to betting on the Stanley Cup playoffs? You're in for an exciting time. Getting started is a breeze. Fire up the DraftKings Sportsbook app, pick your team to win, lock in your wager, and you're off to the races. It's fast, simple, and puts you right in the middle of the action. Here's the kicker. New customers who bet just $5 will score $300 in bonus bets if their wager hits. That's right. Turn $5 into a playoff payout. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code THPN. That's promo code THPN to unlock $300 in bonus bets when your $5 bet wins. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Blue Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive reward. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Copyright 2025 NHL. Okay, so start of game 5. Pretty good, wasn't it? Because another big thing too about this series as a whole was our top players wasn't performing. Well, in game 5, we definitely saw our top players kind of performing. You had Sebastian Aho on a bad turnover from Gustav Forsling, and he is able to get the puck in on a breakaway, and he scores on that breakaway. And I was really happy Aho scored on that breakaway because he has been snake bitten plenty of times on breakaways. But what was great about this goal is that he did not go fifle. He just went in and just shot the puck. And sometimes, and definitely in an instance like that, which works, you just got to shoot the puck. Don't do any deking or whatsoever. I mean, I don't mind the deking when it comes to breakaways, but that's only if that is a part of your strength. And I'm not saying that it's not part of Aho's strength, but we've seen him deed before by trying to go fifle, and it mainly has not worked. But he didn't do that time. So I was happy he did something different. Now, let's just say he did something different and didn't go in. What would I have been disappointed with the chance? Yes, but at least he did something different. So I'm like, okay, at least he's not going back to the 5-hole every time. And he did. He went, I believe, right above Bobrovsky's glove, and he shots it. So great goal. It's 1-0. And then you know what? Aho scores again. He scores on a pass from Jarvis, and that was a goal. I mean, I was surprised Bobrovsky. He let that leak through him. He really did. It kind of hit his pad and trickled under him. So Bobrovsky wasn't really playing good at the start of this game. Really wasn't. And Hurricanes were up 2-0 heading into the second period. Carolina was looking good. They were. And I mean, what's funny is that I did get some flashbacks of the elimination game last year against the Rangers. And I wouldn't say this is a replica of that game, but I do remember we were up 3-1 in the elimination game, and I felt good. And then obviously the Rangers came back, and I mean, even though in that Rangers game, like the Hurricanes, I mean, were they a little bit sloppy? Yeah, but the main thing was Anderson wasn't good. Honestly, I would say probably there was only one goal in this game where I'm like, Anderson probably needs to save that. Because I thought most of these goals were mostly defensive breakdowns. And it's frustrating. I'm not trying to excuse anybody here, but it is tough for a team like Carolina when you have two rookies on the blue line for you. It is very tough. And I mean, with Nikishkin, well, I'll get to Nikishin because first I want to get to a player that kind of started this whole thing in the second period that made Florida go up 3-2. Obviously, you have KK taking a bad penalty in the second period, and I did think it was a callable penalty. I really did. It was almost to a point. It wasn't, but it was almost to a point where I think he was pretty much bear hugging the Florida Panthers in the offensive zone. And I'm like, KK, why are you doing that? And he gets sent to the box. And Hurricanes, I mean, in that game, before that KK penalty, they've been sent to a box a few times before already. You can't keep going back to that well of giving Florida power plays. We know how good Florida is. But KK, he makes a bad penalty. And when I saw that, like, you guys know my opinion on KK. I do not like the player one bit. And I'm not saying that he was the sole reason why we lost this game. I'm not saying that. But it's stuff like that question me of, man, what is this player doing on the ice? And he, honestly, you look at this whole playoff run for the Hurricanes, KK has kind of been invisible. Well, he wasn't invisible there because he actually hurt us there. And what's interesting is I know KK in the Washington series, he made a pass to Stankoven in game 1 that gave the Hurricanes a go-ahead goal. But this penalty right here is going to be a highlight more of KK's playoff performance than that pass right there. Then I would say probably anything that KK has done in this playoff run. Because that's what started it all. Obviously, Florida gets the power play, and you have Tkachuk scoring. I do not blame Anderson on that Tkachuk goal. That was a purely tip-in goal. And I don't blame tips on goalies. Generally, I don't, because when a puck gets redirected in from a player's stick, it is very hard to catch that. But it's 1-2. Carolina's still leading. But obviously, Florida has momentum, and that's just how this sport is. When you get a goal, you get momentum, some sort of momentum, usually. And Florida, you can tell they showed that because 30 seconds later, you have Evan Rodriguez scoring. And to me, that's a goal that was a huge defensive breakdown. I honestly, I don't blame Anderson on that goal either, because it was more of the breakdown in front of him, I thought, than him letting in the goal. Because there are a few things that happened. One, you had Orlov and Nikishin on the ice. And you have Nikishin going after a Florida player near the Florida bench. And again, I don't think anything was wrong there. But what's interesting is that player was already covered by Nikishin. So, but Martinook decides to go at him as well. So you have two Canes players on one Florida guy. So I don't understand much of the reasoning why Martinook went for that Florida Panther right there. But it caused, I believe, let's see here. I think it was Brad Marchand. No, it was not Brad Marchand. It was the player before Brad Marchand that had the puck. And obviously he passes it to Marchand. But another thing too is that Nikishin, he doesn't cover Rodriguez. He lets Rodriguez go right to Anderson. So that's a defensive mistake right there. And That's mistake number 2, I would say. And then there's mistake number 3 in the fact that Orlov was kind of right there between Rodriguez and Marchand, who had the puck. And Marchand sees Rodriguez clearly in front of Anderson. He passes it to him. He scores. Orlov, what are you doing there? Nikishin, why didn't you defend Rodriguez? So it was overall just a bad defensive breakdown in front of Anderson that tied the game. And it's like, oh my gosh, here we go. And that was kind of when I got flashbacks of the Rangers game. I was like, oh man, I was really getting those flashbacks. And then you have Lundell scoring the I made it 3-2 in favor of Florida. And one thing I do want to say on this, and with Aho, obviously he was defending Lundell, and he should have done better. I don't know why he didn't try to get in front or position better in front of Lundell. And I'm not trying to excuse Aho here, but we had 3 guys between Anderson and Aho, and Burns, Robinson, and Svetch. Wouldn't you think it'd be one of those players that be on Lundell? And again, I'm not excusing Aho's performance, not at all. But Aho is taking the face off. So in an instance right there, he kind of has to do a little bit of a 180 in order to get to Lundell. And again, I'm not saying I'm a coaching guru, but if I was a coach, I would have had one of our 3 guys right in front of Anderson beyond Lundell instead of Aho, because honestly, I think it would have been better to get a position on Lundell because he's a big guy to prevent that goal. But regardless, Aho should have defended better. But if I was the coach, I just wonder, should Aho really be defending him in that situation? It's just one of those things. I might be overanalyzing it, but if you look at that goal, it again, not excusing Aho, but I think it puts a lot of pressure on Aho to kind of make a 180 right there from facing Lundell to having to go all the way back to near Anderson to position himself in front of Lundell than it would be with probably Burns or Robinson. That's just my observation. But obviously, it's 3-2 Florida heading into the third period. Very frustrating second period because, I mean, at this point in the playoffs, any mistake that you do could lead to the other team scoring a goal. And Carolina was making lots of mistakes. And Nikishin, I would say, was one of those players. He definitely played like a rookie in this game. I love Nikishin. I think he has a bright future with us. Obviously, the time is not now for him in the playoffs, but he will get going. I really do. I just think Nikishin needs a full season before going into a playoff game. And again, I'm not trying to excuse his performance here because it's do or die time. But I mean, both him and Waro are being put into the fire here. And that's one thing I kind of want to discuss about heading into the offseason is I think you probably need a defenseman to play with Slavin and probably maybe get a depth defenseman too, a good depth defenseman in case one of your top 6 gets hurt. Because even though I love Carolina's play and there are some things I might critique Brendan Moore on, I just think it's not a recipe for success when you mainly just have 5 defensemen playing. Because we know in this playoff series, Brendan Moore has utilized Morrow to probably about 7-8 minutes of ice time. You need all of your defensemen in order to probably win. I would say, I mean, obviously there's no guarantees to winning a game with your full 6 defensemen, but I like my odds with 6 defensemen playing at the normal time that they probably would than relying on 5 defensemen. Because if you're relying on 5 defensemen, and we've seen this, you're going to have Slavin playing near 30 minutes. And while I love Slavin to death, I mean, I think he can handle it. It's not him I'm concerned about. But obviously, you have to know it's his partner, Brent Burns, who's 40 years old, who I don't know if he could handle something like that every game. So it's just one of those things where I just think in a playoff game, you need all the defensemen you can get. It. I mean, I don't envy Brennamore in that decision there. I understand him not playing Morrow a lot, but I do think it makes it harder on the team as a whole to win a playoff game, especially in the Eastern Conference Final, when you're mainly just playing 5 defensemen. That's just to me just common sense right there. When you have the other team playing the normal 6 defensemen, so just frustrating. But we do have some hope in that third period, as we have Jarvis scoring from Svechnikov and Gostisbehere. And this was kind of that Hurricanes type of hockey play. I mean, it was a forechecking type of play. You had Ghost forechecking along with Fetch. And because of that, Florida kind of turned the puck over. And Fetch was kind of able to get a tip of the puck with his stick, get it out right into that high danger area as Jarvis gets the puck. And he gets it right past Bobrovsky. The fans are going wild, and I was so happy we tied it. I really was. I was like, okay, we tied it. I mean, I know people might not like overtime or not, but I'd rather have this game go on as long as we don't get eliminated. So, unfortunately, that didn't happen. You have Carter Verhaeghe scoring. And again, I think that's the defensive breakdown. I don't blame that goal on Anderson. The only goal I would probably say I blame on Anderson, sort of, is the Lundell goal. But that Verhaeghe goal, I mean, obviously you have Barkov doing Barkov-like things. Listen, he is a great player, but Orlov needs to play him better. Orlov needs to use the body a little bit more. I know Barkov is a big guy. I really do. But Orlov just let Barkov kind of just... I mean, Barkov was able to skate right by Orlov. He just was. And I would have rather have Orlov taking a penalty there than giving Barkov a chance right there near Anderson. But another thing, too, is you have Robinson and Nikishkin near Anderson. And again, two things. Robinson, I don't know what you're doing with Barkov there when Orlov was kind of already there. I mean, I guess I understand probably maybe a little bit with Robinson going after Barkov, because that was the time when Barkov kind of beat Orlov, and Robinson was like, okay, I got to take care of this guy. So I guess with Robinson, I'm like, okay, I understand that a little bit. But Nikishin wasn't doing anything. I don't know what Nikishin was thinking, but you have Verhaeghe on the other side of Anderson, who had a gaping net, and he scores. Like, I'm like, Nikishin, you got to cover Verhaeghe. Again, I did not think it was a good game for Nikishin overall. Really didn't. But again, very hard to be in this position when your first NHL games are these playoff games. So it's just one of those instances. So obviously you have Bennett scoring on the empty net, and it is 5-3. Florida wins. They advance to the Cup final. And I'll end on this. Obviously, there are some Canes fans freaking out about this team. I think that there are things that need to change. Yes. I think the main thing of why Carolina was eliminated was just the roster. I don't think they had a good enough roster against Florida. I think some of it is a system thing. I'll explain this more in an upcoming episode, but I think mainly it was, if I could have like a Venn diagram, I would say this: 50% is because Florida is just a better team. They just are. And there's a lot of similarities between the two teams and how they play. It's just Florida, they just have a better roster than we do, especially if you look down the middle. And yes, I am concerned about our center position right now. Really, really am. But down the middle, Florida is just the better team. So I would say the reason why we got eliminated, 50% Florida has is just the better team. I think 30%, again, this is just my opinion, and from what I've seen, I think 30% is just the Canes need to have a better roster. And then it comes down to 20%. I would say 20%, again, this is a small thing, but I think there needs to be some tweaks with Britamore's system. Just some. And what's interesting, I mean, for those of you who don't listen to 32 Thoughts podcast, as Elliot Friedman, who is an insider, I think he raised a good point in the fact that you probably need to tweak the system a little bit in order for star players to come. Because he did say Tom Dundon wants a star player on this team. And I think that's a good question to have. Really is. Can we have a star player come here and play well under Brendan Moore's system? Or does Brendan Moore need to tweak his system in order for a star player to come here? So that's it for this episode. Hope you enjoy it. Again, the podcast will be continuing regardless of Sam not being on this podcast anymore. It's going to be a fun off season. Really is. Canes have lots of cap space in this off season. We have free agency. I think that's going to be an interesting day. You never know what Carolina's going to do in free agency. We also have the entry draft too. I mean, I know the entry draft is going to be decentralized this year, but you never know. I think teams will be possibly making trades during that decentralized draft. You never know. It's going to be fun. Very, very fun. So we'll see you guys after the next episode.